In the fall of 2017, I began compiling a statistical analysis of Dreamcast games that ultimately resulted in 2 videos that launched my YouTube channel. As part of that analysis, I looked at Dreamcast game prices on eBay. And now, a year later, I'm returning to that dataset to update the numbers so that we can see the value fluctuations in the Dreamcast game market over the last year. This is part 2 of a 3-part Dreamcast video series on this topic. In this video, I'll list the top 9 Dreamcast games in terms of retro value lost. My methods will be the same that I used in part 1 of this series, where I exposed the biggest price gainers. First, I limited this list to only those games that sold for at least $20 in the fall of 2017. This was to weed out those cheap games that could have huge percentage fluctuations in price. For example, an $8 game that decreased to $6. On paper, this $2 decrease would be a seemingly massive 25% reduction, but because of the low price, it's not really all that significant or interesting. And it's this filter that has resulted in this video being a top 9 video rather than a top 10. Next, all of the numbers come from the averages listed on pricecharting.com on 2 specific days. One day in the fall of 2017, and now a day in the fall of 2018. I also took a midpoint value in the spring of 2018 to track any strange patterns. All of the prices that I'm going to go over are for complete in-box games, those that have the original box, disc, and instruction manual. Finally, keep this in mind, some of the price drops might seem somewhat small, and you might be asking, what's the big deal? Well, here's a sneak peek of part 3 of this video series. Overall, the average Dreamcast game did increase in value, and so any game that decreased in any amount is noteworthy and well worth mentioning. Number 9. We're going to kick off our list by cheating, because I'm including 4 games in the number 9 spot. 4 games that each declined in price by 10% from the fall of 2017 to the fall of 2018. 3 of these games declined from $20 down to $18, and the 4th, Street Fighter III Double Impact, declined from $40 down to $36. And notice that 2 of these games were fighting games. So I'll give you a second sneak peek of part 3 of this series by letting you know that the fighting game genre was the 2nd worst performing genre in terms of holding retro values over the last year. Number 8. Next up, a game that sold for $37 back in 2017, putting it way in the upper range of Dreamcast game values. But a year later, it dropped down to $32, a 13.5% decrease in value. It's Street Fighter Alpha 3, another fighting game. I'm not quite sure what's affecting the value of fighting games in general and this game in particular, but I will say this game is good. Very good. In fact, IGN gave this game the highest score of the 3 Street Fighter games on the system, and in my opinion, it holds up brilliantly in 2018. One interesting note, the game did shoot up to $48 in the spring of 2018 before crashing down to this value. Number 7. A game that went for $25 in late 2017 dropped to $21 in 2018. A 16% decrease. It's Alien Front Online. Now this one sits in a bit of a gray area, since you could call the game complete with just a jewel case and instructions, or you could say that complete means it comes in the original box with the microphone. Price charting doesn't seem to differentiate between the two. Either way, the collective average is down, and I'm not entirely sure why. The game got decent reviews initially, and it sold poorly, meaning that the supply level in 2018 should be relatively low and acting to drive up the price. So this is a little puzzling. By the way, you can play this game online today with a DreamPie kit. Amazing stuff. Number 6. This one is interesting. A game that went for $30 a year ago now goes for $25, a 16.7% drop. It's ECW, Anarchy Rules. This game is awful, no argument there. But this one is noteworthy in that I believe very few copies were ever made of the game. It's somewhat rare. According to the rumor and innuendo, something about music licensing on the game caused it to be pulled from store shelves. I'm not sure if this is true though. Can anybody speak to that? Is that true? If it is, I would expect this price to eventually come back up as the natural forces of supply and demand take hold over the long term. But maybe there just is no demand for this one. Number 5. Another interesting one, and one of the more high-profile games on the system. It found itself in the upper echelon of values at $40 in 2017, but a year later, it had dropped to $33, a 17.5% decrease. It's Sonic Adventure 2. When I did the original statistical analysis back in 2017, it struck me that Sonic 2 might be overvalued given how many copies of the game originally sold. It was a pretty big hit back in the Dreamcast's original life, and for that reason, I wouldn't be surprised if the price continues to fall a little more. There's plenty of supply in the wild of this game. But then again, this is the retro video game world, where up can be down and left can be right. Number 4. Another expensive one, a $50 game in late 2017, putting it solidly in the top 10% of Dreamcast values. But a year later, it dropped $10 down to $40, a 20% drop. It's The Last Blade 2, Heart of the Samurai, and it's another fighting game that's struggling to hold its price, or maybe just a game that got overly inflated and is coming back down to earth. I have to be honest, I've never played this one, but it's another one that, at least in the fall of 2018, is defying basic economics. It sold poorly when it came out in 2001, and so a price decrease like this is a bit of a head scratcher. Number 3. A $65 game in 2018. A year later, it's down to $51, a 21.5% decrease. Significant. It's another Street Fighter game, this time Third Strike. I'm running out of things to say about Street Fighter games, so I'll just say that this one placed number 21 on the Dreamcast Junkyard's top 200 Dreamcast games list. They said that it may be the most balanced fighting game ever produced. Number 2. This is a big one, a big name, going from $35 down to $27, a 22.8% price decrease. It's Shenmue. This is where the spring of 2018 midpoint value is worth discussing, because in the spring of 18, Shenmue skyrocketed up to $45, and I don't think I'm going out on a limb to suggest that that price increase was due to the excitement for the Shenmue remaster. Now that that remaster is out on PS4 and Xbox, the price has naturally settled back down. Still, remaster or not, this one is a legendary title, and for me, it's the original Dreamcast version that will always be the definitive must-have physical edition. It's time to reveal the number 1 price drop. A game that went from $37 down to $25, a 32.4% drop. It's Typing of the Dead. And I actually bought this one from a local retro store fairly recently, along with a Dreamcast keyboard. I had low expectations, but I quickly found out that this is one of the system's absolute gems. And instead of speculating why this one may have gone down in value, I'd rather just take this time to urge you to find a copy of this game if you don't already have it, and give it a shot. You will not be disappointed. I realize that seeing game after game that's decreasing in price might give the impression that the overall Dreamcast market is trending downwards, but that's not the case at all, as I said earlier. And in the final part of this 3-part series, I'll explore that overall market for the Dreamcast, to look at various trends across various categories and try to make some sense of everything. So please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss it when that video uploads. And if you missed part 1 of this series, where I explored biggest price increases, be sure to check that one out before part 3 releases. In the meantime, thanks for watching. I really appreciate the support. I'm having a lot of fun with this mini analysis, and I hope you found it to be a decent way to pass some time. Until next time, all the best, and the sky's the limit.